Hey, Holy Girls, welcome back to Holy Girl Talk. If you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back and sitting with me again. I really don't take that lightly. And if this is your very first time listening, welcome. I'm genuinely glad you're here. Holy Girl Talk is a modern faith podcast where we talk about God, scripture, womanhood, desire, healing, and real life in a way that's honest, compassionate, and very human. You don't need to be perfect to be here. You don't need to have everything figured out. This space is for women who are trying, growing, unlearning, and choosing freedom one step at a time. Before we get into today's episode, I want to remind you to follow the podcast if you haven't already so you don't miss future episodes like this one. And if at any point during this conversation someone comes to mind, a friend, a sister, someone who's struggling or questioning or just needs reassurance, I encourage you to share this episode with them. These conversations are meant to be shared, not carried alone. Today's episode is a tender one, especially with Valentine's Day around us. We're talking about desire, sex, lust, and freedom. And I want to be very clear from the start. This is not a shame-based episode. This is not a fear-driven conversation. And this is not about pretending desire doesn't exist. This is about honesty, about clarity, and about freedom. This episode is for women who feel desire deeply but want to remain grounded in their faith. It's for women who feel lonely on Valentine's Day, for women navigating dating, temptation, hookup culture, emotional attachment, or old patterns they're trying to break. And it's also for women who are carrying shame from their sexual past, women who are learning how to forgive themselves, and women who are quietly battling sexual habits or cycles they don't want anymore. I want you to hear this clearly. Wanting intimacy does not make you weak. Having desire does not make you broken. And struggling does not disqualify you from God's grace. The problem is not desire. The problem is desperation. When longing turns into self-abandonment, when wanting connection turns into settling, and when lust becomes a substitute for safety, love, or worth. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between lust and longing. We're going to talk about sex honestly without being graphic and without being dismissive. We're going to talk about freedom, not as perfection, not as repression, but as clarity, peace, and alignment. And we're also going to hold space for women who are learning how to release shame, forgive themselves, and believe that real freedom is possible, even if it feels far away right now. So wherever you're listening from, whatever your relationship status is, and whatever you're carrying into this conversation, I want you to know you're safe here. This is not about condemnation. It's about compassion. It's about truth. And it's about choosing freedom over cycles that no longer serve you. Let's get into it. I want to start here because this matters more than anything else we're going to talk about today. Desire itself is not the enemy. Wanting intimacy, connection, closeness, and affection does not make you less holy, less disciplined, or less faithful. Desire is human, and more than that, desire is something God understands. So many women grow up learning how to fear their desire instead of understand it. We're taught to ignore it, suppress it, or feel guilty for it. And when desire is treated like something dangerous instead of something to be stewarded, it doesn't disappear, it just shows up in ways that feel confusing, compulsive, or hard to control later on. The problem is not that you want love, the problem is not that you feel sexual attraction. The problem is not that you crave closeness. The issue is what we do with those desires when they're not acknowledged, when they're unmet, or when they're driven by loneliness, insecurity, or the need to feel chosen. This is why so many cycles don't start in the body. They start in the heart, in the mind, in the quiet moments where you feel unseen, unwanted, or tired of waiting. Lust doesn't usually show up as a decision first. It shows up as a feeling, a craving, a thought that says, I just want to feel something. I just want to feel wanted. I just want to stop feeling alone. And if you've ever been there, I want you to know you're not abnormal, you're not weak, and you're not broken, you're human. And desire, when it's misunderstood or unmet, can easily turn into something that controls us instead of something we steward. So as we move through this episode, I want you to release the idea that you need to eliminate desire to be free. Freedom doesn't come from pretending you don't want intimacy. Freedom comes from understanding your desire well enough that it no longer owns you. Now let's talk about the difference between desire and desperation, because this is where so many of us get tripped up. Desire says, I want connection, I want intimacy, I want to be loved. Desperation says, I need this right now or I don't feel okay. And that difference matters more than we realize. Desperation usually doesn't come from wanting someone, it comes from needing someone to fill a space inside of you that feels empty, unprotected, or unseen. It's what happens when desire is fueled by fear instead of peace. Fear of being alone, fear of being left behind, fear of not being chosen. And when desire is driven by fear, it starts to override discernment. This is why desperation can make us settle for things we wouldn't normally choose. It can make us ignore red flags. It can make us accept attention instead of consistency, chemistry instead of safety, and potential instead of reality. Not because we don't know better, but because loneliness can make clarity feel optional. Valentine's Day tends to intensify this. The messaging everywhere tells us that being wanted equals being valuable, that being partnered equals being fulfilled. And if you're already feeling a little tender, that pressure can quietly push desire into desperation without you even realizing it. But here's the truth: wanting intimacy is healthy, needing intimacy to feel whole is not. And that's not something to shame yourself for, it's something to notice with compassion. Because when we can tell the difference between desire and desperation, we regain choice. We stop reacting and start responding. Desire invites you to move thoughtfully. Desperation rushes you into decisions you later have to heal from. And learning to pause in that space to ask yourself why you want what you want is one of the most powerful steps toward real freedom. This is where we need to talk about the difference between lust and longing because they often get confused. Lust and longing can feel similar on the surface, but they're actually driven by very different things. Lust is about urgency, it wants something now. It wants to consume, escape, or satisfy a feeling as quickly as possible. Longing, on the other hand, is about connection. It wants safety, it wants presence, it wants to be seen and known. Lust usually focuses on how someone makes you feel in the moment. Longing focuses on how you feel after the moment is over. Lust rushes past discernment. Longing invites patience. And the reason this matters is because many of us think we're craving sex, when what we're actually craving is closeness, reassurance, or emotional safety. Lust often shows up emotionally before it ever shows up physically. It starts in the mind, through fantasy, through replaying moments, through attaching to someone's potential instead of their character, through seeking attention just to feel wanted, even if deep down you know it's not what you truly need. And this is where compassion is so important, because lust is often a signal, not a failure. It's a signal that something inside you wants comfort, connection, or affirmation. When we ignore that signal or judge ourselves for it, we miss the opportunity to address what's actually going on underneath. Longing, when it's healthy, doesn't rush you into self betrayal. It doesn't ask you to abandon your values to feel chosen. It allows you to want intimacy without losing clarity. And learning to tell the difference between lust and longing is one of the most important skills we can develop as women who want both faith and emotional honesty. We also have to talk about sex in today's culture because the environment we're living in shapes how we experience desire. We live in a time where access is constant. Dating apps, social media, and instant communication make connection feel easy, but intimacy is actually harder than ever to find. Sex is available, but emotional safety often isn't. And because sex is so accessible, it can slowly start to take on roles it was never meant to carry. It becomes validation, proof that you're attractive, proof that you're wanted, proof that you still have value. And when sex becomes a way to confirm worth instead of a way to share connection, it often leaves women feeling emptier afterward, even when the moment felt exciting at first. This is something we don't talk about enough: the emotional cost of casual intimacy. Not because it's forbidden, but because it's powerful. Sex bonds, it attaches, it stirs hope, expectation, and vulnerability, even when we tell ourselves it's just physical. And when those emotional layers aren't protected, confusion tends to follow. Many women find themselves stuck in cycles they didn't plan, repeating patterns that don't align with what they truly want, feeling emotionally drained without fully understanding why. And that doesn't mean you're irresponsible or naive. It means your heart is responding exactly the way it was designed to respond to connection. This is why clarity matters more than chemistry. Chemistry can be intense, chemistry can be intoxicating. But chemistry without safety often leads to emotional whiplash. And choosing to be honest about that isn't restrictive, it's wise. Because freedom doesn't come from having more access. It comes from understanding what actually nourishes you. This brings us to the connection between sex and the heart because whether we like it or not, they are deeply linked. Sex is not just a physical act, it carries emotional weight, memory, and attachment. Even when intentions are casual, the heart doesn't always interpret experiences that way. When bodies connect, hearts often follow. That's why sex can intensify feelings so quickly. It can create a sense of closeness that feels like intimacy, even when trust, commitment, or emotional safety haven't been established yet. And that gap between physical closeness and emotional security is where confusion tends to grow. Many women walk away from experiences like this wondering why they feel more attached, more vulnerable, or more emotional than they expected to. And the answer isn't that something is wrong with you, it's that your heart is responding exactly the way it was designed to respond to connection. There is nothing weak about that. This is why emotional safety matters just as much as physical attraction. It's why clarity before intimacy can save you from heartache later. And it's why listening to your intuition, instead of overriding it for the sake of chemistry, is an act of wisdom, not fear. Understanding how sex impacts your heart isn't about restriction, it's about protection. Protecting your peace, protecting your emotional energy, protecting your ability to attach in healthy ways. And when we honor that connection, we move closer to freedom, not further away from it. So, what does freedom actually look like when it comes to sex, lust, and desire? Because freedom is not pretending you don't feel temptation, it's not suppressing attraction, and it's not punishing yourself for having urges. Real freedom is clarity. It's the ability to pause, choose intentionally, and act from alignment instead of impulse. Sexual self control is often misunderstood. It's framed like deprivation, when in reality, it's about power over your choices, power to say yes when something is safe, mutual, and aligned, and power to say no when something would cost you your peace. Self control isn't about denying yourself joy, it's about refusing to trade long term fulfillment for short term relief. Freedom means you no longer feel owned by your desires. They don't get to dictate your decisions. You can feel attraction without acting on it. You can want intimacy without rushing into attachment. You can notice temptation without being consumed by it. That space between feeling and action, that pause, is where freedom lives. And boundaries play a huge role here. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep love out, they're filters meant to keep harm away. They help you protect your emotional and spiritual energy so that when intimacy does happen, it's rooted in safety, respect, and intention, not urgency or fear. Freedom doesn't mean you'll never struggle again. It means struggle no longer defines you. It means you have tools, awareness, and compassion for yourself when desire feels strong. And over time, those small intentional choices build a sense of peace that no impulsive moment ever could. I want to speak directly now to the woman who is carrying shame about her sexual past or who feels trapped in sexual patterns she doesn't want anymore. Because if that's you, this part of the conversation is for you. And I want you to hear this clearly without qualifiers or conditions. God is not shocked by your story. He is not disappointed in you, and He is not holding your past over your head. So many women are fighting battles they never talk about. Cycles of behavior they promised themselves they would stop, habits they don't understand, moments they regret, and instead of receiving help or healing, they carry quiet shame that says, I should be past this by now. I should know better. Something must be wrong with me. But shame is not the voice of God. Shame does not heal. Shame actually keeps people stuck. For many women, sexual behavior becomes a coping mechanism long before it becomes a conscious choice. It becomes a way to feel wanted, soothed, distracted, or temporarily relieved from emotional pain. That does not excuse harmful patterns, but it does explain them, and understanding that difference is crucial for real freedom. If you've struggled with compulsive sexual behavior, pornography, emotional dependency, or repeated cycles you genuinely want to break, I want you to know this: you are not weak, you are not dirty, and you are not too far gone. Freedom does not begin with punishment. It begins with honesty and compassion. Forgiving yourself is not pretending your past didn't matter. It's refusing to let it define you forever. God's grace is not about explaining away harm, it's about restoring identity. And restoration is often a process, not a moment. Healing happens in layers. Freedom is built slowly. And progress does not require perfection. You do not need to relive every detail of your past to be healed. You do not need to confess your story publicly to be worthy of freedom. You need support, truth, and the courage to believe that your future can look different than your past, and it can. If you're listening and thinking, I want to be free, but I don't know how, that desire alone matters. Wanting freedom is already a step toward it. You are not behind, you are not failing, you are in the process. And God walks with you through every step of that process with patience, not condemnation. I also want to speak to the woman who is waiting, not because she's afraid of desire, but because she's choosing discernment. The woman who feels attraction, feels longing, feels curiosity, and still chooses patience, not because she's repressing herself, but because she's protecting her peace. Waiting does not mean you don't want intimacy. It means you want it done well. It means you want connection without confusion. It means you're choosing not to rush into something that could cost you emotionally later, even when the temptation to settle feels real. And I want to be clear, waiting is not a moral flex. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's about alignment. It's about honoring where you are emotionally, spiritually, and mentally right now. Some seasons call for restraint, not because desire is wrong, but because timing matters. If you've ever felt ashamed for wanting intimacy while choosing to wait, I want you to release that. Wanting love and choosing patience are not contradictions. They can coexist. You are allowed to desire deeply and still say, not yet. That choice is not weakness, it's wisdom. Waiting doesn't mean you're missing out. It means you're discerning. And discernment is one of the most powerful forms of self-respect. You're not denying your self-love. You're trusting that love, when it comes, won't require you to abandon yourself to receive it. So what does all of this look like in real life when you're actually navigating dating, attraction, and relationships? It starts with clarity. Clarity about what you want, clarity about what you need, and clarity about what you're no longer willing to sacrifice just to feel wanted. This might look like slowing things down when chemistry is strong, but safety is unclear. It might look like saying no without explaining yourself. It might look like taking a break from situations that trigger old patterns while you rebuild trust with yourself. And it might look like choosing peace over attention, even when attention feels flattering. Freedom doesn't mean temptation disappears, it means you have options when it shows up. You can choose to pause instead of react. You can choose alignment instead of impulse. You can choose to walk away from something that feels good in the moment, but costly afterward. And I want to say this gently. Desire does not mean every opportunity is meant for you. Attraction is not always direction. Just because something feels intense doesn't mean it's healthy. And learning to tell the difference is a skill that takes practice, not perfection. Living with clarity doesn't make you boring. It makes you grounded. It gives you the ability to enjoy connection without losing yourself in it. And over time, those choices build confidence, trust in yourself, and a sense of freedom that feels steady instead of chaotic. As we start to close out this episode, I want to invite you into a moment of honest reflection, not a moment to judge yourself, not a moment to replay every decision you wish you could undo, just a moment to notice where you are right now. Ask yourself, where do I feel desire most strongly in my life right now? And what is that desire really asking for? Is it connection, comfort, validation, safety, or reassurance? Let yourself be honest without criticizing yourself for the answer. You might also ask, where have I been acting from desperation instead of clarity? Where have I rushed, settled, or overridden my intuition just to feel wanted or less alone? And if that brings anything up for you, let it come up with compassion. Awareness is not condemnation, it's the beginning of freedom. And finally, ask yourself this: where do I need to forgive myself for past choices, for cycles I stayed in too long, for moments where I knew better but didn't have the tools yet? Self-forgiveness is not excusing harm. It's releasing yourself from punishment so healing can actually happen. You don't need to fix everything today. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need honesty, gentleness, and the willingness to choose freedom one step at a time. God, we come to you honestly today. We bring our desire, our longing, our confusion, and our questions. We bring the parts of our story that feel heavy, the places where shame has lingered, and the cycles we're tired of repeating. You already see it all, and you meet us with compassion, not condemnation. We ask for freedom, freedom from lust-driven cycles, freedom from shame, and freedom from the belief that our past defines our future. Help us forgive ourselves where we've been holding on to guilt. Give us clarity where desire has felt confusing. Give us strength where temptation feels loud. And give us patience to trust you with timing, healing, and intimacy. For the women who are waiting, bring peace. For the women who are healing, bring reassurance. And for the women who are rebuilding trust with themselves, bring confidence and grace. Remind us that freedom is possible, progress matters, and you walk with us through every step. Amen. As we close out today's episode, I want you to remember this. You are not broken for wanting intimacy. You are not behind for choosing patience, and you are not disqualified because of your past. Desire does not define you. Your worth does not fluctuate, and freedom is not out of reach. If this episode spoke to you, make sure you're following Holy Girl Talk so you don't miss future conversations like this one. And if you know someone who is struggling, healing, or navigating desire quietly, share this episode with them. These conversations can change lives when they're shared in love. If you have questions, prayer requests, or topics you'd like us to talk about, you can email holygirltalkpodcast@gmail.com. I read them and I pray over them. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you for showing up honestly and choosing freedom over shame. This Valentine's Day, choose clarity over pressure, peace over impulse, and grace for yourself as you grow. I'll talk to you soon, Holy Girl.